It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.
Galloway and the mother of all talk shows. Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
Welcome to the mother of all talk shows, coming to you live from Moscow. No sanctions are being broken in the making of this broadcast. In any case, the world stands on the brink of the mother of all worlds. It is Ramadan, but I've got to tell you, it's not going to be a peaceful one in the Middle East or anywhere near you. It's all coming up on the mother of all talk shows. Stay tuned.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows. The only education you can get for free. George Galloway, the mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway, the world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
As the Muslim feast and famine of Ramadan begins, an absolute devastation is about to be visited right in the heart of the Middle East, starting in the Persian Gulf, but very quickly spreading to the Levant and to the surrounding Arab states in the Persian Gulf. I have, from the highest placed of sources, that Israel and the United States have decided on all-out war on Iran in the next hours, at most in the next days. My source, impeccable, unimpeachable, tells me that they promise shock and awe, going back to the shock and awe that was launched around about this time in 2003, and which led to the cascade of ISIS and Al-Qaeda around the world, and led to the deaths of 1 million people in Iraq, thousands of service personnel of the American, British, and other allied armies. A war which was over quickly, but the end was actually merely the beginning, and a war that rages still. Learning nothing, forgetting nothing, the Trump regime has decided, like the Bourbons before them, that if it doesn't work the first several times, why not try it again? Donald Trump is about to open the gates of hell. And moreover, when the Russian Navy is in the Straits of Hormuz performing naval exercises with the Iranian Navy, this will be a war without end. This will be a war without limits. This will be a war without territorial boundaries. This will be a war that will spread like wildfire right across the region and right across the world. Donald Trump has assembled more than 1/3 of all American armed forces in or heading rapidly towards the Persian Gulf. In a U-turn after a U-turn after a U-turn, Trump has just lashed the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer for his decision to lease Diego Garcia and give title to the people who rightly own it. He once opposed it, then supported it, then opposed it again, and then supported it again. And now, this evening, where else but on social media, Trump has declared that he will be using not just Diego Garcia, but the Royal Air Force Base at Fairford in England, in the United Kingdom, for an all-out war. Placing Britain, of course, in both circumstances in the firing line. The Iranians have missiles that can reach the United States of America. They definitely have missiles that can reach Westminster. The consequences of this war have been much warned against. Even by the neighbors, satraps as they are, have told Trump that this can only bring ruin upon them. And their regimes are beginning now to rattle down. The leader of the United Arab Emirates, Mohammed bin Zayed, wear his father's watch always. Mohammed bin Zayed is in the middle of a power struggle that has seen him disappear from view, and rumors of his death circulating in the region and farther beyond. The Persian Gulf family dictatorships will no longer exist once Iran begins its retaliation. In fact, I'll be asking our guests this evening about whether or not the Iranians should not get their retaliation in first. After all, a clear and present threat exists to their entire being, to their existential existence. An entire naval and air armada has been assembled, is sailing towards them. The president is daily, even hourly, threatening with them on social media. He's threatening to obliterate them. He's threatening to destroy them. And nobody could argue that Iran does not have the legal right to fire first. And those aircraft carriers in the Persian Gulf will quickly turn into floating coffins. What about the Russian Navy? What are the Russians going to do? What are the Chinese going to do? Iran is a centrally placed ally of both of them. Iran is the major supplier of oil to China, which has already lost its ally in Venezuela. And don't tell me that the Delcy Rodriguez has not sold the pass, because everything makes clear that she has indeed done so. So is China going to watch another ally of its being destroyed by Donald Trump? Is Russia going to allow the United States Army and Navy and Air Force to create a hostile regime right in the heart of the Russian heartland? This and these are big questions, and we are perfectly placed with our guests tonight to analyze them at the highest level. The guests we have, one Iranian-born Swedish and American citizen, and one a veteran of the CIA. Now, if you think I'm bluffing, I promise you that I am not. I know this war has been a long time coming, and we have covered it coming for not months, but years. But this time, it's real. Shock and awe. Well, how did it work out the last time? It's more or less the anniversary of the war that Bush and Blair launched on Iraq in 2003. They killed 1 million people. Iraq has effectively ceased to exist as a functioning state ever since. ISIS and Al-Qaeda were born there. They proliferated and spread throughout the world. And the conflict is not over yet. The United States has just promised sanctions on Iraq. Sanctions on the Iraq they created, if they have the temerity to allow the man that won the election in Iraq to become Prime Minister again. Al-Maliki is not a trusted ally of the United States. That's why he won the election. The people of Iraq hate the United States. But then, at this point, who doesn't? Donald Trump is dealing death and devastation, instability and chaos all over the world, even inside the European Union, even inside NATO, even inside Washington, even inside his own cabinet, where it is widely believed that the Vice President, J.D. Vance, completely opposes the war against Iran. He's causing devastation and chaos even in his own country. Multiple mass shootings, assassinations of politicians, actually or revealed as plots and conspiracies. When the murder by ICE of 2 white Americans took place in the last month, half of America cheered. When Charlie Kirk was brutally assassinated on camera, the other half of America cheered. America's on the brink of civil conflict, with a minority supporting Donald Trump, but a fanatic and heavily armed minority. This chaos has been unleashed as the prospect of the final end of Western European-based hegemony in the world began to be obviously doomed. That's what Marco Rubio's speech to the Munich Security Conference was all about. If you haven't read it, I urge you to read it line by line. It was a declaration that Western civilization is dying, it's going down, and that the Western European and their North American kith and kin must unite to reverse the anti-colonial trend, to reverse the trend towards multipolar power in the world. And the Europeans cheered it. In fact, they gave it a standing ovation. So now the global South, Africa, Asia, Latin America, Eurasia, they all now know what the American empire plans. It plans a reconquest of the world before it is literally too late for them to mount such an expedition. And Iran is the second of Donald Trump's reconquests. For 100 years and more, the United States has bridled against the independence of Latin America, against the degeneration of the Monroe Doctrine. A Donroe Doctrine is now in place. No opposition to American domination will be permitted in the Western Hemisphere, and that includes from European countries. Denmark, as Senator Lindsey Graham said, who cares who owns Greenland? Well, only Greenland and Denmark, of course, because it's their sovereign territory. But who, as Lindsey Graham said, is Denmark? In fact, he said it with such profanity that it caused great offense even to American diplomats present. But he was telling the truth. Who is Denmark? Who is the Netherlands? Who is France? Who is Britain with their woke and weak armed forces? The United States knows full well that American security guarantees are the only thing that they could rely on. They tried to destroy Russia and failed. They tried to stop China's rise and rise, but they failed. And they're about to discover that Iran is not Venezuela. Iran is not Iraq. The United States does not have the military force to occupy Iran, a country of 90 million people and truly vast territory, with allies in Moscow and Beijing. And that's why they've chosen shock and awe. My source tells me that the United States and Israeli air power is going to devastate Iran for 48, 72 hours or more until they hope they have broken the regime and broken the spirit of the people. But they forgot that boomerangs come back to hit you. The Iranian armed forces are this time locked and loaded. The Iranian response is this time perfectly calibrated. And as Professor Marandi, our friend and frequent guest, just tweeted in the last few minutes, leave all Arab countries in the Persian Gulf immediately, full stop. That means that the Straits of Hormuz are going to be blocked, that the oil and gas production facilities in all of Iran's neighbors are going to be instantly destroyed. That means that American bases far away from the Persian Gulf are going to be annihilated, and anyone in them will be eviscerated. The armada of ships is highly vulnerable from land to ship missiles, hypersonic missiles, which will target the big warships, target the aircraft carriers. And then there's the question of Israel. This war is for Israel, just like the Iraq war was for Israel. Israel has now led the United States into another disaster, and they will pay a high price for it, because the Iranians, once they're finished with their Gulf neighbors, will ensure that the full might of their missile power will fall on the streets of Tel Aviv, of Ashkelon, of Haifa, of Jaffa. The Iranian response will be unlimited in time and space. It will stretch across the world, but it may destroy Israel first and foremost. Now, some of you say, my own son asked me if Iran could possibly win this confrontation. The answer is, it depends what you mean by winning. It is entirely underestimated in Western circles the nature of the Iranian political and religious system. For them, death is not the end. For them, death is a ticket to paradise. For them, death against America fighting Israel is a guaranteed ticket to paradise. For them, going down with all guns and all rockets blazing is an honor. To go down fighting Satan, the great Satan, and the little Satans is an honor for them. They will not care if they die. They will not care, because for them, death is not the end. For us, in the West, flabby and completely lost to religion, it is, of course. We care only about material things. And therefore, I draw your attention to this. Once the Straits of Hormuz have been closed, once not a pint of oil or a meter of gas is being produced anywhere in the Persian Gulf, and any already produced will be precluded from leaving the Straits of Hormuz, you will not be able to buy oil and gas. Your homes will shiver. Your factories will grind to a halt. Your cars will be abandoned on the streets. Your aircraft will be unable to take off. Your economy will be devastated and ruined. Your unemployment, Britain's just reached 5% this week. It'll be 50% or more. So if you care about material things, then beware that what Donald Trump and Netanyahu, with the active participation of Keir Starmer, because Trump's just told us he's going to be using an English airfield to fly bombers to destroy Iran. Once the war begins, nothing that you hold dear will any longer be guaranteed, and much of what you value will disappear forever. And a new world will be born in flames and screams of agony in country after country. Apocalyptic for sure, but then the apocalypse begins any time now. This is the mother of all talk shows. Stay tuned. Beautiful call, as always, robust. Terrific characterization of little Macron and the imposter Shah of Los Angeles. He is, of course, an imposter in two ways. He's an imposter in pretending that he has any support from the great mass of the 90 million Iranians who've not seen him since he was 4 years old, when he fled with their riches in the saddlebags, and the father and mother, emperor, empress, Shah, roamed around the world from Monaco to God knows where, spending the millions that they had stolen from the people of Iran. But he's a pretender, an imposter for a second reason. The Pahlavis are not even the royal family of Iran. The royal family of Iran is ancient, millennia, and the rightful emperor or Shah, if there is such a thing as a rightful emperor, rightful Shah, was overthrown by a corporal in the Iranian army, the grandfather of this joker Reza. His grandfather was a corporal, a private soldier in the Iranian army, was raised to the rank of corporal, and then, with British backing, overthrew the actual monarch. And he had a son who was the infamous Shah of Shahs, the father of Reza. So he's a double imposter.
You are listening to the Mother of All Talk Shows with George Galloway.
A double imposter, that's him. Now, the only thing that the Western regimes do not control is some judges, although only up to a point, Lord Copper, in the High Court in England, where important events happened this week in the relation to the terrorism charges against the entirely peaceful tree huggers of Palestine Action, was thrown out by the court as unlawful. But the only other thing they don't control is social media. Why do you think I'm having to take the mother of all talk shows around the world around the actual free world rather than the bit of the world that used to call themselves the free world. President Macron just today, masks off, all in the name of liberté, said free speech was dead. It could no longer be afforded. Guided free speech was the future. Do you trust Macron to guide your free speech? Do you trust Keir Starmer to guide your free speech? Well, they're intending to, with the plans that are afoot and the regulations already in place to control algorithmically and, if necessary, by legal force, the people who post and the people who allow them to post. So we're asking in the poll this evening, do you trust governments to regulate social media? Duh. Is the Pope a Catholic? Again, do you trust governments to regulate social media? Well, it's not looking good for the governments right at this moment. You can vote on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway, on my X, on the YouTube community poll, on the YouTube stream. Please, how many times do I have to ask you? Subscribe to my channel and give a thumbs up to the show. It makes it more difficult for them to oppress us. And you can, of course, vote if you're one of the creme de la creme, the avant-garde, the people who support the show on patreon.com/George Galloway. If you want to call the show, it's toll-free in the US and Canada. +1 844 944 3344. It's free of charge in Britain and Ireland. 0808 196 5522. And the worldwide number 0044 203 966 2625. Let's find the first call. Yes, it's from Dubai, just aforementioned, and of the parish most affected. Amir in Dubai, tell us how it looks from where you are.
Hello, dear George. Hope you're doing great. It's always a great pleasure speaking with you again.
Thank you.
I don't know if you remember, I called you a month ago asking about why Iran does not do a preemptive strike, because it's obvious that they've already declared war on Iran. And that was when they were sending the first Abraham Lincoln strike group to the Middle East. But then I just recently realized that the reason they are not doing that is because if they do that, then that would initiate the Article 5 of the NATO, where they can all attack Iran altogether. It won't just be the US then. And it would give them even more reason to attack Iran. What do you think?
Well, I'm sure that's one of the calculations. But another would be that Trump was serious this time in the negotiations in Geneva. But it's now clear, having collapsed those talks, that he was merely buying time for military preparations to get all ducks, all aircraft carriers in a row. So whatever calculation was made a month ago, Amir, is plainly a different calculation today. I still think that Iran will not, because they are people who value, if you like, appearances. They will not want to be seen to be the country that started the war. But I say, as someone who many times told them that if I was running Iran, I would already have nuclear weapons. I'd have as many nuclear weapons as Kim Jong-un in North Korea, which, as you'll have noticed, is not under any threat of invasion or attack by anybody at all. Not by the United States, not by Japan, not by anybody. North Korea is an impregnable fortress because they have nuclear weapons. The Iranians have decided, for theological reasons, which are beyond me, that they cannot and will not develop nuclear weapons. And if we take them at their word, then that leaves them entirely vulnerable to the kind of attack they seem to be ready to face now imminently. But maybe when the facts change, so do their opinions. And it may be that their opinion now is not the opinion of a month ago, Amir. Professor Marandi just warned everyone to leave the Arab countries of the Persian Gulf. You may want to consider it if it's still possible yourself. Thanks for the call. Now, you can leave comments. If you're watching on YouTube, there's the QR code. Just swipe it, and you can leave comments that I'll try and read out. Fix in Man says, funny how the people who marched chanting "No Kings" last month are now calling for the king to be put back on the throne in Iran. What a brilliant comment. And Uzi 1mm says, hopefully it's just the usual posturing from the orange nonce. But at this point, you never know. Well, I think I know, Uzi. Alexander K64 said, Ronald Reagan famously said, these are the 9 most terrifying words in the English language. We are from the government, and we're here to help. Christina Hines says, given that about 90% of politicians, irrespective of political party they are in, are all acting against the general public, no, I don't trust governments to regulate social media. And Bent John says, free Imran Khan. Please speak on this issue. Well, what can I do? John, World War III is about to break out. I've made my position on Imran Khan clear 1,000 times, and it hasn't changed and will not change. Josh in California wants to talk about the big one, the big enchilada, Iran and the United States of America. Josh, welcome.
Thank you, George, and Ramadan Mubarak to you, your beautiful family, and to all of the people listening.
Thank you.
Inshallah, as we begin Ramadan, we can only hope, we can only pray that the seemingly escalatory postures being taken by the United States and Iran are merely exhibition intended to be illustrative of the futility of non-diplomatic solutions and turn out to be merely constructive ripples in the process, which is never going to be, smooth seas when you are dealing with the brink of events that could be catastrophic strategically to everyone involved.
Well, I would be the last person to discourage prayer. I myself pray every day. But the idea that hopes and prayers are going to do it is, I'm afraid, likely to disappoint. There is about to be a huge kinetic war in the Middle East, on top of the world's oil and gas reserves, on top of the Straits of Hormuz, through which they get to the world, and the mother of all wars against Israel, which is, of course, effectively a part of the United States. Lindsey Graham boasted today that he's in Israel every 2 weeks. What a senator from Carolina is doing in Israel every 2 weeks, well, one can only speculate. The United States Intelligence Service and the Israeli Intelligence Service are one, as has been revealed 2,700,000 times already in the Epstein affair. The extent to which the United States will sacrifice all of its vital interests, any of its allies, even the kings and sheikhs and emirs that send Donald Trump and his son-in-law packing with gold and jewels beyond an emperor's imagination, even they are to be sacrificed for Israel. America first, you have to be joking. Thank you, Josh. Now, our big donors this week are, of course, heading over to the Moats.tv website. Big thanks if you've already made a donation. Here's this week's Wall of Fame. Listen up. Martin Davey, Jenny Fox, Oliver Turney, Martin Barnsdale, and Teresa Steele. Wow. New names, those. Big donors. And it's thanks to them and everybody else who donates on moats.tv that this show keeps on going. And if you don't think Moats is important, this day, this week, in this period, in this epoch, well, I'm lost for words. Gino's in the Bronx, always worth hearing from on Iran and the US. Gino, welcome back.
Hey, George, thank you. George, I tell you, you're letting freedom ring. You make my heart sing every week. I really appreciate you being you got the courage still, you got the truth, you got the fortitude. You're like Dante Alighieri. You're an exile. You're one of the Dantes. Chris Hedges, I think, is another one on the way. And I really appreciate the work you guys do. Now, George, about Iran, you know, most American presidents went to a Reverend Billy Graham, who lived to be almost 100 years old from 1918 to 2018. He got involved with politics too much, and he got burned. So he realized this is bad to hang out with these kind of people. So he said something on YouTube, which people can look up, about don't play with Iran. Those are God's children also. And it's really a great speech he gave about Iran, ancient Persia, same thing. That God, you know, there are many others that Jesus talked about that you know not of, and I believe the Persians are certainly amongst them. They never bothered anybody for 200 years. We pushed Iraq against them with chemical warfare. We did so many horrendous things to them, and I do personally believe these are people following Satan. As a burgeoning Christian, I don't accept them as Christians. They're the same kind of people that would have pushed for the Crusades. They would have pushed for burning women as witches. They'd push for people to be enslaved because Noah's son was dark and disobeyed. This kind of nonsense. The essence of that holy book is how to be more loving. It's as simple as that. And these actions and these thoughts from an unmoral, unethical, financially disrupted person to on every level, physically. So that's one thing with that. Now, if I can just draw a quick bridge. In 1969, there was a festival up in Bethel, New York, Woodstock. Most people don't know that this was during the Vietnam War when people were being conscripted to go into the service. Most people don't know that. It was opened by a Swami Satchidananda, who I met. He taught Dr. Dean Ornish how to reverse heart disease. He's been doing it for 50 years. Most people don't know about him. He even treated Bill Clinton when the doctor said, "You're okay." 3 weeks later, he had a heart attack. He's on the Dean Ornish program, which is a Bible diet. Daniel, like your mentor said, be like Daniel in the lion's den. Well, Daniel was a vegetarian, and so was Adam and Eve, and that was the instructions. If God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, that was the instructions to follow. So that's connected with that. Also, the BBC kept from the public years ago about the number one guy with the treating cancer in the world, Dr. Joseph Issels. He's got a 16.7% cure rate in the whole world. We only got 1% of 1%. With terminal cases, he was curing. He even had Bob Marley out of a stretcher playing soccer. But because his lungs were shot, smoking that ganja. So these are all connected. Our bodies are our temple. The number 1-2 killer in America will take out 1.5 million people this year is cancer and heart disease. And I believe that the insensitivity we have to animals that we shouldn't even be eating is what leads us to being insensitive to humans. It's all connected, like Chief Seattle said.
Well, look, Gino,
so
that was a tour de force, a tour of the horizon. But the first part, at least, of your comments, I heartily agree with. What if the Persians are God-chosen people? I don't believe in the idea of a chosen people, and it's a misreading or a falsification of the Bible, in any case, to describe the Israelis in present-day Israel as chosen people. If there's any chosen people, it's most likely to be the Palestinians under occupation and a 70-year Calvary. But the truth is, Persian civilization is genuine and true civilization. They are good friends, but bad enemies. And the consequences of what is about to happen, I am in no doubt about that, are going to be world-altering and life-altering. But of course, if people can find good health by stopping eating meat, well, good luck to them. Gino, thanks for the call. Syed is in Saudi Arabia. He wants to talk about Iran also. Go ahead, Syed.
Hey, Mr. Galloway. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Ramadan Mubarak.
To you as well. Once again, thank you to yourself, Mr. Gayatri Galloway, your family, Guy, and the entire Modes team.
Thank you.
And
thank you.
Before I begin, honor compels me to preface my statement with the following. It's not too late to do the right thing, but one day soon it will be. So diving right in, I believe, and actually I know to be the case, that Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei is the greatest head of state of our time. He is a personification of honor. And for those that don't agree with me, respectfully, you're either misguided or sinister. You fall in one of those categories. He subscribes to the school of thought which tells us women are like flowers. They're to be treated gently with kindness and affection. He lives by the principles that inform us that men play a vital role within our society and women play a vital role within our society. This honorable way of life is derived from the teachings of Imam Ali, the greatest student of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Ayatollah Khamenei continually reinforces the following message. While we Muslims argue about where to place our hands during prayer, our enemies are trying to cut them off. He holds Prophet Jesus and Prophet Moses, peace be upon them, in the highest regard and promotes peaceful coexistence, expecting the most honorable Muslims, Christians, Jews, as well as other members of our society to uphold the principles these blessed personalities preached and lived by. The message of peaceful coexistence, to enjoin the good, forbid the evil, to take care of the needy and the destitute, to oppose the oppressor and support the oppressed, has been his life's primary mission. Thus, the continuation of the revolution started by its predecessors. Majority of the people of the Islamic Republic of Iran and those that know him around the world have great love him greatly and have great reverence for him. I yield my time.
Well, look, Syed, very powerful words. Our friend Syed Mohammed Marandi, professor, constantly uses the phrase, and I see that he used it again today, that we are the nation of Imam Hussein and we will never desert the children of Palestine. These are two exceedingly powerful flags. These are two motivational lodestars that will fuel the fiercest possible resistance and forever. You see, I constantly said in the run-up to 2003, what are you going to do once you've broken Iraq? Once you've broken Iraq, you will own it. What do you know about Iraq? What do you know about the Muslim world? People were voting for war that couldn't tell the difference between a Shiite and a Sunni, wouldn't understand a word of what you have just said. These fools rampaged into Iraq, unleashing endless extremism and violence, which then cascaded all over the world. And Iraq is still not fixed. And in my opinion, will never be fixed. At least until the return of the Messiah. But thank you so much, Syed, of taking the risk in Saudi Arabia to make that powerful call. Scott is in Manhattan in the United States. Let's hear what he thinks. Go ahead, Scott.
George, I love you infinitely. You are the most articulate genius of our time, combating evil wherever you find it. But here's what I think. If you remember the movie, there was a movie, 2010, the year we made contact. So in this movie, the monoliths ignite Jupiter. So that's how they prevent World War III. The monoliths ignite Jupiter. So what we need today...
Well, let's pray for that. Let's pray for that, Scott. I've got no idea what you're talking about, but I know that your heart is in the right place. It's a bad line. Let me move on. I've got to take a break in any case, and I've got to tell you that our first guest this evening is going to be very well worth watching. He's the Executive Vice President at the Quincy Institute, and he's the 2010 Galloway Award winner and author. He is, of course, Trita Parsi, born in Iran, now a Swedish and American citizen, and one of the leading lights in foreign policy analysis in Washington. You definitely will want to hear him. Let me take a quick break, and then he should be with me. Stay tuned. Let me say that you can listen to the audio-only version of Moats on our Moats podcast, and the numbers on that are going through the roof. Just search Moats with George Galloway on Apple, Spotify, Google, or whichever platform you listen to your podcasts on. In recent weeks, it's been the #1 political podcast in Benin, Jordan, the Gambia, Qatar, Jamaica, Ghana, Iceland, Malaysia, Singapore, Sweden, and the Philippines. #1 political podcast in all those countries. Truly, truly phenomenal. Do you know that BBC News has lost 40% of its audience in the last 2 years? It's official. And of course, that is the sensible thing to do. But to get people to tune in and change course and listen to a radically different point of view is even more difficult. But it's happening. And the numbers that we are racking up are now in their millions.
You are listening to the Mother of All Talkshows with George Galloway.
You're watching the Mother of All Talkshows, coming to you from Moscow as the world teeters on the brink of a war throughout the world. It's not necessarily a world war, although the Russian Navy is now in the firing line of the US Armada, that big, beautiful armada that Donald Trump has sent to the Persian Gulf, which must have particularly acute feelings for my next guest. Trita Parsi, as I said, is Iranian-born, but he's a very dispassionate, scientific analyst of events in the Gulf and elsewhere, and I'm glad to say he joins us now. Vice President of the Quincy Institute. Trita, welcome for the first time to the Mother of All Talkshows. The situation
George,
could scarcely
I've been with you once before.
Yeah.
I've been with you once before, I think, but it was more than 2 years ago. Yeah, I believe so.
Oh, wow. My sincere apologies. And such a handsome face, how could I have forgotten it? Must have been on the radio, Trita. But the situation could scarcely be more grave, could it? How are you viewing it?
I see it as tremendously grave, and I see it as such not only because I think war would be devastating, that I think that there's a significant risk of civil war inside of Iran following that, but also because the incentive structure for both sides now appear to be in favor of some form of escalation. From the US side, of course, the administration believes that their overwhelming force benefits them, and that using it, or at least threatening it, will eventually cause the Iranians to capitulate. I've seen zero evidence for that so far. I don't think that's going to change. But also from the Iranian side, they, I think, correctly recognize that Trump seems to have an exaggerated view of how much relative power Iran has lost, and as a result thinks that capitulation is in the cards, and believe that Iran, though much weaker than the US, obviously has one advantage, which is that Trump's pain tolerance is much lower. And that if there is a confrontation between the two sides that is very intense and the Iranians strike at the US very, very hard, that this could cause President Trump to back off because he is looking for quick victories. This would not be a quick victory. And the Iranians don't have to win the war. They just need to make sure that they destroy Trump's presidency before they lose the war, which is a very different proposition. That doesn't mean that they won't take huge hits. They clearly will. But I think at this point, they don't believe that they have any way out of this. And this is then leading to a scenario in which the likelihood of war is just going up. These talks that were held in Geneva yesterday, I think, I won't say that they're theatrics, but it doesn't seem as if from the US side there was really a genuine approach towards diplomacy. They go there with essentially capitulation offer, and they want to check in on the Iranians to see if the Iranians are ready to capitulate, given how much military power the U.S. has amassed. And if not, let's meet again in 2 weeks and see if you're ready by then. Rather than an actual negotiations in which the two sides exchange offers, ideas, proposals, etc. As I understand it, from what I heard from the talks, the proposals came from the Iranian side, not from the U.S. side. The U.S. was essentially only offering terms of capitulation, and that was not something that the Iranians were going to accept.
Trita, isn't it the case that the US is refusing to take yes for an answer? They said it was about nuclear, and the Iranians have said yes about nuclear. They've said you can have inspections to guarantee that we are not developing a nuclear weapon. And that's not enough for Donald Trump. A new JCPO is not enough for Donald Trump. The capitulation terms that you refer to or allude to are that Iran should make itself defenseless, that it should have no missile capability, even though its adversaries all have missile capability, that it should break its relations with all of its friends and allies across the Arab and indeed Muslim world. These are negotiating tactics that are designed to fail, aren't they?
Yes and no. I think, first of all, you're quite right that when it comes to demands on missiles and other things, I mean, it's really just capitulation at the end of the day. You're absolutely correct about that. And there's a reason why the Iranians are not saying yes to that, obviously. If they were to give up their missiles at this point, that would be the last deterrence that they have against Israel. Hezbollah has been much weakened. Many of these other organizations have been much weakened. They tended to form a first line of defense for the Iranians. It's now more or less gone. Without the missiles, the Iranians have no ability to strike back at Israel. And the Israelis are very worried about the missiles precisely because it limits Israel's maneuverability in the region. It challenges Israel's desire for domination and hegemony. So, but without them, then Iran would turn into what Syria was. As soon as Assad was on a plane to Moscow, the Israelis started bombing everything in Syria to make sure that the next regime would have no capacity whatsoever to pose any challenge to Israel's domination and hegemony. But even on the nuclear issue, because as I understand that these talks actually did focus almost exclusively on the nuclear issue, the position there too has been now something that goes well beyond what is necessary in order for the US to achieve its interests. If its interest is defined as no nuclear weapon, that's fine. But that is not what's being asked for. Essentially is giving up a complete, all elements of the nuclear program, not even in return for sanctions relief, but in return for no new sanctions. But reality is there's hardly any new sanctions that could be imposed at this point. So even when it is reduced to the nuclear variable, which should be resolvable if there is an approach that is based on what Trump talked about earlier on and what he still talks about, which is no nuclear weapon, you actually can find ways to be able to meet both sides' interest on that, but not if it is combined with some sort of an exaggerated maximalist approach, which appears to be what is taking place right now. And that goes back to the core of your issue. Is this just done in order to have an excuse to go to war? I think from those who have been pushing variables such as missiles, etc., yes, those are poison pills from the Israelis. They want these talks to collapse. I don't think Trump wants the talks to collapse. I think, however, Trump only sees capitulation as the acceptable outcome for him. So he's going for capitulation. And when the Iranians say no, he just moved more military assets there in the hope that that will convince them. I don't think it will. And in Trump's mind, perhaps he's doing this to avoid war, but he's only increasing the likelihood of war.
Well, I mean, of course, Trump's art of the deal does include browbeating and even bludgeoning and threatening, but it's gone beyond the art of the deal now. The proportion of U.S. armed force that is now in the Gulf, and the word that I got today from an impeccable source, someone who definitely is in a position to know, the decision is made and the action is imminent. And therefore that begs the question, as some of our callers, actually from the Gulf, have just been asking me, why doesn't Iran preemptively strike the armada that is up against them, and which is clearly, under international law, a clear and present danger and threat to them? Mightn't their military position be enhanced by firing the first shot?
Yes, but only in a scenario in which they have concluded that war is completely unavoidable. Because if they start a war, then they will have a war. But if they still believe that war is avoidable, and clearly their preference is not to have a war, only in that scenario would it potentially make sense. But it would also change dynamics in various ways. If the Iranians are the ones attacking, what will that do to the likelihood of a couple of weeks of warfare actually leading to Trump backing down? I mean, the whole premise of them thinking that they will gain something out of a potential confrontation if they have to, is that by making it as costly as possible for Trump, they will convince him to back down. But if they're the ones who are firing the first shot, does that change that equation? Does it change the psychology on the American side, in which backing off becomes an absolutely non-option for the Americans if they were the ones that were attacked, even though, of course, they were amassing to attack themselves? So I think there's a lot of different factors that come into play here. The military advantage one is only one of those factors. There's psychological factors that come into play. There are political factors that come into play, as well as what that does to the relations with some of the GCC states. At the end of the day, the Iranians have invested heavily in trying to improve relations with Saudi Arabia and with many of their neighbors. They're already risking a lot of that if they start attacking facilities in the GCC, whether it is American bases or whether it is civilian oil installations. But on top of that, if they're the ones who are actually starting the war, what does that do to the psychology of some of their neighbors that so far they've not been on Iran's side, but they've been on the side of avoiding war?
And of course, it would affect their relations with the two superpower allies that they have, one of which, Russia, is currently engaged in naval exercises with the Iranian Navy. I refer, of course, to Russia. And China also has vital interests in Iran and vital interests in the preservation of the Iranian state, the avoiding of balkanization, the avoiding of the civil war you alluded to earlier. Russia and China might well be affected by a preemptive retaliation by Iran. But as I'm talking about them, if the war begins, if you will allow that hypothesis, what will the attitude of Russia and China be?
Well, I think we saw that in Venezuela, the Russians and the Chinese were taken by surprise, and their response was very, very muted. I've spoken to officials from those countries who say that they will not have the same response if this same thing, more or less in some variation, is repeated with Iran. But at the same time, I have a very hard time seeing that the Russians, for instance, would do anything particularly impactful, because what is at the core of their interest is to end the war in Ukraine and find some way of making a deal. And they believe that with Trump, they have the best chance of doing so. They're not going to sacrifice that in order to assist the Iranians. Same thing with the Chinese. They have their own interests at heart, of course. And as much as they don't want to see the balkanization of Iran or that instability, they're very worried about it. It does not mean that that is a core interest of theirs at this point that would compel them to sacrifice other interests that they have. They see themselves already on a pathway towards some form of a confrontation with the United States, hopefully not a military one. Not one that they want, by the way, and they don't want to do anything that increases the risk of that either. But what would happen to Iran would be costly to the Chinese. They're getting a significant amount of their oil from Iran. Not that it's irreplaceable, but nevertheless, this will be costly. And it will be particularly costly if the United States is using this strategy to slowly but surely take control over more and more of the providers of oil to China, and by that gain a significant amount of leverage over the Chinese. Now, whether that means that Iran is the line that the Chinese will not allow the U.S. to cross or not remains to be seen, but I very much doubt it.
Finally, and I'm grateful for your time, and I apologize in advance if this is in any way a difficult question. What can you tell us about what's going on in the UAE? There are rumors flying that the MBZ, the ruler of the UAE, has been overthrown, that he's even been killed or that he has died, that there is internal rebellion inside the family. If any of those things are true, can you help us understand them and what might be going on?
So I have to say, George, on this one, you probably can find almost anyone who would be a better guest than me. I don't have any insight into that at all. I saw some rumors on Twitter about this, but I've not seen anything that has been confirmed. So I can't speak as to whether that is happening or not. What I can say, however, that if something of that line would happen, it would be a huge development in the region in terms that you are seeing a new constellation being formed in the region. One in which the Saudis are breaking free from the Israeli-Emirati axis, moving closer to Turkey, Egypt, and Qatar. States that increasingly view Israel as the most destabilizing and aggressive and the main threat in the region rather than seeing Iran as such. Do not see a value in that type of an Abraham Accord that the Emiratis signed. And this is also part of the reason why they have been so adamant about preventing war with Iran, not because they have much loss for the Islamic Republic, but because de facto, Iran has become a buffer between them and Israel. And if Iran is defeated or significantly weakened, or if a pro-Israeli puppet is installed in Tehran, then that would be a blow to their geopolitical security and interest in the region, in which they're trying to find some sort of a coalition in order to balance against what they see as an increasingly reckless and unhinged Israeli state allied with the UAE. Well,
Bennett was making similar points in his speech that I saw today, Naftali Bennett. He said that Egypt, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia were becoming a threat to Israel, which would have to be dealt with once the Iranians had been dealt with. That's more or less what you're saying, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and I would also say that this is repeating what we saw happen in the early 1990s. Early 1990s, you had Iraq defeated by the United States in a UN coalition. The Soviet Union collapsed. What's interesting there is that those were the two factors that had brought Iran and Israel closer to each other during the time of the Shah, and even during the first decade of the Islamic Revolution, in which the Israelis actually were lobbying for Iran in Washington, D.C. I'm sure you remember the Iran-Contra scandal, in which they wanted to make sure that the U.S. sent weapons to Iran, because they were more afraid of Saddam Hussein winning the war. That would be a worse situation from the Israelis. By 1991, those two factors evaporated, and suddenly the Israelis started to see Iran as the threat. And they started to talk about Islamic fundamentalism as the main threat. And they were terrified that the United States and Iran would actually rebuild their relations, and that Israel's strategic value to the United States would be lost in this new post-Cold War world. So what happened? late 1991, suddenly you started to see a lot of articles in the Israeli press talking about how Iran is the new threat. We saw the same thing happen after the Turks succeeded in Syria by overthrowing Assad and supporting the HTC. Suddenly, the Israelis started to talk about how Erdogan is the most dangerous person in the Middle East. And that focus started to shift a little bit. They weren't even finished with Iran, but they started to shift it towards Turkey. So it's out there. This is not speculative. The Israelis are openly talking about it. The Arab states and Egypt and Turkey, of course, are listening to this. And as a result, they see that war with Iran is a stepping stone for the Israelis to come after them.
Well, if that doesn't concentrate their mind, I'm not sure anything would. I said finally before, but let me finally ask you, because you're so brilliant, I can hardly bear to let you go. Are there divisions inside the Trump administration on what to do about Iran? I sometimes get the feeling that Vance, for example, isn't all that keen on this course of action.
There are divisions inside the administration, and they always have been on issues of this kind. The divisions appear to look a little bit different from what they did before, however. There are others, not just Vance, that have skepticism, but this is now kept much more quiet than it was back in June. Back in June, you had more leaks about this, there were more open talk about this, and there was a much more open fight within MAGA about this issue than what you have this time around. There is a fight still, but it is much more behind the scenes than it was before for a variety of different reasons. But one thing that seems to be different, not necessarily compared to June, but that is nevertheless different, is that the president himself appears to be a driving force behind this. This is not him being pushed by a bureaucracy or by the Pentagon to go in this direction, but the president himself being on a sugar high from Venezuela, from his previous bombing campaign on Iran, as well as a lot of, in my view, misinformation being fed to him by the Israelis, who tell him that the Iranians are much weaker than others say. All you need to do is push it a little bit. You'll overthrow the regime. You will be the hero. And it seems to me that he's falling for that, whereas other elements in the administration are much more resistant to those type of narratives.
Fascinating. Trita Parsi, thank you for joining us on the Mother of All
Thank you so much for having me.
Spellbinding interview that, and I hope you'll consider it carefully. You might want to text me or call me as the show goes on, but I need to take a break because I've got the one and only Larry Johnson up right after this. You'll definitely want to hear him. Stay tuned. It was set up in 1949. People, an amazing number of people imagine that it was set up in opposition to the former Warsaw Pact formed by the Soviet Union and the socialist countries. But in fact, NATO predated by some years the creation of the Warsaw Pact, which was in fact an answer to the West creating NATO. Now, I've spent, well, literally my whole life, I mean, since I was 13 years old, I've been demanding Britain out of NATO, and now NATO is disintegrating in front of our eyes. I don't know when they agreed the permanent membership and the veto system, but the UN is clearly now unfit for purpose. And I have long believed and proselytized for the BRICS and the SCO and the New World Order to establish their own United Nations, because it seems to me that the current UN in New York is, well, completely useless, has hegemony over it, can even decide which member states are to be allowed a visa to come and speak at the United Nations. It's preposterous. I remember I was with Chavez in New York when the US refused to give visas to his bodyguards. But such was Chavez's charisma that he took to the streets of New York without any bodyguards and was hailed everywhere he turned. Such was the magnificence of Hugo Chavez. He walked around the streets of New York to a hero's welcome without bodyguards because the US refused to allow his bodyguards a visa.
You are listening to the Mother of All Talk Shows with George Galloway.
Do you trust governments to regulate social media? Well, it's not going well. It's not going any better for the governments, but the number of people, the quantum in the poll is spectacularly rising. Do you trust governments to regulate social media? If you do trust them, I've got a bridge in London I could sell you going cheap. The numbers on every single platform are virtually identical. Nobody trusts you, Macron, Starmer, Merz, and definitely nobody trusts the administration in the United States of America. Now, the podcast is also rocketing. It's been a great week. We're in the top 10 for politics in Kuwait, and that's likely to grow, in Turkey, in Greece, and Nigeria. We're in the charts, top 40 for politics in India, Croatia, and the Dominican Republic. You can download the Moats podcast by simply scanning the QR code on the screen now. Larry Johnson's my go-to man at times like this. He knows everything there is to know about war and about the machinations of the deep state in the United States of America. How could he not? He's a veteran of the CIA and the State Department's Office of Counter-Terrorism. And he's the founder of the influential BERG Associates. Larry, wonderful to see you again, even in such difficult
Hello, my friend.
Circumstances. A good friend of ours, mutual friend of ours, who's in a position to know these things even better than you and I, has assured me that the war is about to start. Is that your take on it also?
Yeah, I think that they're loading it up. The last sort of chess piece to move into place will be the Gerald R. Ford, the aircraft carrier. Once it arrives in the Med, that's about 3 days away. They anticipate Friday, Saturday. So I think the odds are very high that Trump is going to be pressured into launching this attack, and this will go down in history as one of the most foolish, reckless steps in world history, because I think it's going to end up doing significant damage, not just physical damage to the U.S. military capabilities in the region, but damage to the U.S. reputation. It's like, you have Muhammad Ali as this great fighter, and then once Muhammad Ali steps into a ring against somebody that he's expected to beat, and that fighter beats him, all of a sudden the reputation goes away, and that's what's facing the United States, because Russia and China have really made a point of joining forces in the wake of that failed color revolution that was launched on December 28th, with the United States taking the lead in an economic attack, an act of war on Iran. On June 29th, Russia, China, and Iran signed a trilateral security agreement. And that wasn't just for show. That is an agreement with real teeth, and the Russians and Chinese have been acting on that agreement since the signing that took place late last month.
Trump's more primo carnera than Muhammad Ali, and only people of your age and mine will know that allusion. But you remember the film about primo carnera. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. And if the United States, you see, Iran doesn't have to win the war. It just has to survive the war and inflict serious material damage on the Trump presidency. And if I were a betting man, I'd put money on their ability to do that, Larry.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Look, there is a deal. If if Trump was actually acting on his own in possession of his faculties and pursuing his own agenda, I actually think he'd make the deal with Iran that's on the table. Iran is not building a nuclear weapon. They don't, at least under the Ayatollah, they don't want to build it. They see that as an act against God, that it is a sin to do so. So they're willing to allow guarantees to be put in place that would ensure that they're not building a nuke, and to allow permanent on-site inspection of the enrichment facilities. So if the goal was just to, if they were serious about, oh, we don't want Iran to get a nuke, then that deal's there to be available. But that's not what it's about. The United States persists in telling the big lie, a number of big lies. Number one, that Iran is the number one sponsor of terrorism in the world. It is absolutely, factually not true. I can prove it both through the publications from my old office at State, the patterns, they put out the patterns of global terrorism. That started in 1990, which reported on what had happened in 89. It had continued through 2003. Then they began calling it country reports on terrorism. The last one was issued last April in 2025 for the preceding year, 2024. And then there's a French think tank called Fondelab. And Fondelab also has done a study. And what does that study reveal? Since 1979, and let's put it in 1980, is 46 years. The number one groups responsible for 80+% of the terrorist attacks are the Sunnis that are sponsored by individuals and governments in the Gulf, the Saudis, the Qataris, the Emiratis. Not a single group in the top groups that have killed literally hundreds of thousands of people over the last 46 years, not a single one of them is connected to or funded by Iran. Not one. And yet they go with this lie that Iran's the number one sponsor of terrorism. It is a flagrant lie.
Well, I mean, they even say Cuba is a sponsor of terrorism, when Cuba, of course, is completely antithetical to terrorism. It's completely alien to their political ideology, but that's another matter. You seem to think that Trump, left to his own devices, might be favorable to a deal rather than what will turn out, I agree with you, to be one hell of a war, Larry. This is not Venezuela.
Yes.
This is not even Iraq 2003. This is the mother of all wars we're talking about, and fraught with terrifying dangers to all kinds of people, many of them close friends of the Trump family. But Trita Parsi, my earlier guest, he felt that Trump had taken charge of this file, that Trump was the one doing the charging towards war. And while he acknowledged that there were divisions in the administration, this time at least, Trump was up for the mother of all wars.
Yeah, well, no, he is up for it. Yeah, absolutely. You remember what happened when Israel launched its surprise attack on June 13th? Initially, Trump's attitude was, "Hi," he was Sergeant Schultz from Hogan's Heroes. "I know nothing. I see nothing. I hear I didn't know anything about this." And then 2 days later, he goes, "Oh, I knew about it all along. I was fully on top of it." He's going to say whatever needs to be said. The military momentum in this is more of the deep state, and I continue to insist that the deep state is driving a lot of this train, not Trump. And I use the example of when he hosted the quote peace talks between Armenia and Azerbaijan last summer in D.C. Because when I saw that, I was like, where did that come from? Because I guarantee you, if you would have told Trump to find Armenia and Azerbaijan on a map, he wouldn't have known which continent to look on. In fact, he still keeps calling it, he settled the war between Azerbaijan and Albania. And you're going, yeah, he's really on top of his geography game here. No, that was a CIA operation. And note that the CIA has an enormous presence in Armenia, a significant presence. So this is this goes into this broader plan to take out the Iranian Islamic Republic, not because it's the main source of terrorism. In fact, the real irony here is the Iranians with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, the IRGC, they were in the forefront of fighting those radical Sunni Islamist groups, the ISIS in particular, Al Qaeda, Tahrir al-Sham, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, whose former leader is now president of Syria. Iran was fighting these Islamic groups who, on paper, were the ones responsible for killing Americans, and yet, what's America doing? We're funding the very ones we claim that they're killing us, and we're attacking the guys who are trying to fight them. We are in, George, my friend, we're in a crazy world.
Yeah, we are. We've never had a crazier one, and you and I have lived through a lot of crazy people running things in the world. God knows if we'll survive it, Larry. But going back to the kinetics, if you like, you make the point that the latest aircraft carrier to join the group is about 3 days off the coast of Israel. It can either then park itself there and try to help the anti-missile operation, or it could sail further into the Gulf, which would knock D-Day forward a few days into the following week. But it will be by the weekend in the Mediterranean, and it will be off the coast of Israel. Is Israel ready to face the inevitable consequences of this?
No, they're not. And if you know, one of the other false narratives that has been pushed by both Washington and Israel is that Iran barely laid a glove on them during the 12-day war. But, you know, the actual evidence showed that there was substantial and significant damage. And the Iranians basically pulled their punches even then. But now they've recognized that they are in an existential fight for survival. And they are approaching it that way. That's why they swallowed their pride and sought direct assistance from both Russia and China, which both are happy to provide. You know, right now, Russia, China, and Iran, along with India, are conducting joint naval exercises. Now, this has been an annual event, so this exercise is nothing that's just been ginned up in the last 2 weeks because of the rising tensions. It's been on the board, but it is being invested now by Russia and China with some additional participation, sending a message to the United States that Iran's not going to be in this alone. And then when you look at the array of firepower, what the United States can actually do, right now it's keeping its aircraft carrier that's in the Arabian Sea about 1,000 miles off the coast of Iran. Well, why is that relevant? Because the destroyers that are accompanying that aircraft carrier that are to provide the air defense screen, they also carry on board, there are three destroyers. Each one is carrying a load of about 56 Tomahawk cruise missiles. The only problem is the Tomahawk cruise missile can only fly 1,000 miles. So if you're 1,000 miles offshore and then you're firing a missile that can only go 1,000 miles, that means you're going to be blowing up a bunch of beachfront property, but not much else. So, and then it requires the U.S. to deliver missiles that are launched from aircraft. Well, the Chinese have now provided Iran with a three-dimensional radar system that has been fully integrated with Russia's air defense systems, S-300, S-400. And that radar system looks out about 300 miles from the border of Iran. So any stealth aircraft, and these are specifically designed to detect stealth aircraft. Any stealth aircraft, once they enter in that, is going to be detected and raises a significant odds that it'll be shot down. So the United States could be experiencing air losses like it has. The last time it experienced any significant air loss was in the campaign in Serbia, Yugoslavia, back in 1999.
Now, you know Russia very well, and so let me segue to that, Larry. because I'm keen to get your expert take on what might be good news. The talks in Geneva between Russia, the United States, and Ukraine, they didn't collapse. Nobody's trousers fell down. They appeared to be difficult, but professional. And one got the impression, even from initial reports, that some progress had been made. And then we learned today something which could be more significant, that just as he was leaving for the airport, the chief Russian negotiator was asked to come back and hold a 2-hour bilateral meeting, just the Russians and the Ukrainians. Whether the US gave permission for that, who knows? But a 2-hour meeting just between the two of them, that sounds like progress to me. What about you?
I'm not as confident. It depends on, was this Budanov or Umarov? Because Budanov has got his ties with the CIA. Umarov has got his ties with British MI6. And there's actually, I call it a sort of a proxy civil war underway right now between the Americans and the Brits, because they're looking at the Ukraine conflict in two very diverse ways. The Russian position is not going to change. It is set in stone, which is the territories of Crimea, Zaporizhia, Kherson, Donetsk, Luhansk. Those are part now permanently of the Russian Federal Republic. They're not going to be returned to Ukraine in any form whatsoever. There's not going to be any concessions on that on those issues. The only thing on the table right now is whether Russia will continue to take territory, to take particularly Odessa, Nikolaev, Dnipropetrovsk, and Kharkiv as part of Novorossiya. Both Lavrov and Putin have spoken in recent months about Novorossiya as being, this is part of Russia. So they're looking to negotiate basically a surrender of Ukraine. Zelensky is refusing to surrender, but Zelensky may not be in the same powerful position that he thinks he is. You've got Zaluzhny, who's been in the UK as Ukraine's ambassador to Her Majesty's Court, or His Majesty's Court now. So I view him as a tool of MI6. You got Budanov, who's sitting now as advisor to the president, former head of the intelligence outfit. He's been very close with the CIA. So really, the UK and the United States are going to ultimately decide how this gets settled. And I don't think really the Ukrainians are going to have much of a say in it.
Well, the other Europeans are definitely not, which makes it all the more surprising, their reaction to Rubio's speech by telecast at the Munich conference the other day. I got the feeling I had been, as George Bush would put it, misunderestimating Rubio. I think he's emerged as a powerful theoretician of empire, and he has a mission. And I would have thought Vance might be a bit nervous about that mission. And his mission is to relaunch the Western colonial empires, to halt the reversals of what he called communist-inspired colonial uprising. By definition, though he didn't name them, roll back the BRICS, roll back the SCO, reconquer, essentially, reconquer all the ground that has been lost since the Second World War. And the Europeans were up clapping it like seals, standing ovation. What was your reaction?
Same as yours. I thought, Yogi Berra, the old catcher of the New York Yankees, used to say, "This is deja vu all over again." I mean, they've learned nothing since the collapse of the Soviet Union. When the West was presented a golden opportunity to really create a new world order, a world order in which the interests of each country were promoted, we tried to build up, not tear down. We tried to collaborate with, not dominate. Instead, the United States chose the opposite. We saw the Russia economy as prostrate, as prostrate on the ground, that we could take control of it. We could essentially rape it of its resources, dominate it, split it up. And then that damn Vladimir Putin comes along and disrupts that whole dream. And instead, go back to pitch this conflict where the United States, by being at the time, in 2000, 2001, the dominant economic player in the world, instead of using that position again to build up others, we used it to bully and to threaten and to coerce. Well, you can only do that so long before you get the pushback, and that's where BRICS got its start in 2015, and then the development of BRICS, it's accelerated as a result of U.S. actions to punish all countries for not just not doing what the United States wants with respect to bilateral relations, but also punishing India for having diplomatic relations with Russia. And so the United States we're a psychopathic country, and that's why I suggest to my Russian friends, you don't negotiate with a serial killer. You put the serial killer down or in jail. And that's essentially what the United States is, in my view now. We've become the equivalent of a serial killer. We got 700 plus military bases, and we're getting ready to launch a military attack on the country of Iran, who has not attacked us by any stretch. They've not threatened us out of context. And instead, we are going to create a pretext that's going to send bombers in that's going to kill men, women, and children. And we don't give a damn, because they're not real people as far as we're concerned in the United States. They're just the cost of doing business. And that,
well, as
I am
Congressman Randy
that.
Fine put it, they're less than dogs. Muslims are less than dogs, according to a member of the U.S. Congress, Mr. Randy Fine, just the other day. Now, I'm in Moscow, Larry, and it's full of Americans. They're not going around with Stetsons and cowboy boots, but they're here. And it is reported, I think in The Economist today, but citing Ukrainian intelligence, that Trump has lined up $400 billion worth of business for American companies and American interests here in Moscow. That's, if true, a very powerful reason for the U.S. to finish this thing. But as you put it earlier, Zelensky doesn't want to surrender. So you've got an irresistible force in Donald Trump, and you've got an immovable object in Zelensky. If Trump is really now inked, or at least penciled, a lifting of economic sanctions on Russia, and a huge bonanza of business waiting in the pipe, why doesn't he go all the way and pull the lever that gets rid of Zelensky?
Yeah, well, because Trump's not serious about it. Look, let's step back and look objectively at what's happened. And this is per Lavrov as well, Foreign Minister Lavrov. The United States made some firm commitments to Russia at the Anchorage summit last August to Putin. The United States has not fulfilled any of those promises. The United States continues to impose sanctions on Russia and third parties that deal with Russia, number one. Number two, they haven't unfrozen the assets. Number three, they haven't returned the property that was illegally confiscated by Barack Obama in the United States in 2016, December of 2016. They haven't reestablished direct flights between the United States and Russia. You can't point to one single thing where Donald Trump has offered a gesture to say, hey, we're gonna remove these. Remember these people we had sanctions? We're removing those sanctions. They haven't done that. So you can't point to one thing that Donald Trump and his team have done other than continue to escalate. And they're saying, oh, well, we're going to give Zelensky until June. June? Give him till tomorrow at noon, because the United States can pull the plug that quick. But they don't want to, because we keep the ultimate goal here is not to have a peaceful relationship with Russia. The ultimate goal here is ultimately to destroy Russia, get control of Russian assets, break Russia up as a it's too damn big. And we want those rare earth minerals. We want the gold, we want the uranium, we want the oil. And the Russians shouldn't have it. That's the Western attitude.
Finally, Larry, if I may, and you've been very generous with your time. Keir Starmer is on the point of falling. He has a by-election coming up at the end of the month. He's virtually certain to lose it ignominiously. Then he's got local elections in May, which are going to be a landslide defeat. And at that point, a leadership challenge against him is virtually a certainty. So if the British are playing this pernicious role, which, I mean, even in Geneva, the British brothel creeper Powell was actually hanging around in the lounge of the hotel where the talks were taking place. He's the national security advisor of Keir Starmer. Who's driving this British determination to play such a dog in the manger role in relation to the Ukraine conflict? Britain's a country on its knees, breaking up, literally breaking up, and its economy going down the drain, unemployment rising. And why are the British so obsessing about keeping this war going?
I would look into the city of London and to the banks, because the hopes and dreams that were inherent in getting control of the resources in Ukraine were always there. Let's not forget, prior to the start of the special military operation, the number one country in the world in terms of natural resources being able to be self-sufficient was Russia. Number 5 was Ukraine. So a country that was that rich in resources was certainly being eyed by the West as a ripe target. Now, the other thing to take into account is, although Ukraine was blessed with this vast abundance of resources, it was the poorest country in Europe. How could that be? Well, the reason for it, and we've seen parallels with what France did to the countries in the Sahel, to Mali, for example, and Niger, that when you've got a colonial interest, you are extracting from the country. You're not giving back. You're not doing what the Chinese do with the Belt Road Initiative, where you're building up infrastructure and you're equipping the people with education and trying to raise the standard of living. It's all about taking and absorbing for yourself without any regard for the locals. That's what's happened to Ukraine. Ukraine is just, it's something to be used. And without any regard for its people, without any regard for the welfare of the children. I mean, it's really sick. But the UK is just living out its colonial legacy. I mean, frankly, that's how it's dealt with most of the world for the last 300 years. Become a habit. And unfortunately, the United States has been imitating it. So we're both in the same boat.
Yeah, a boat that is listing and may well be sinking. Larry Johnson, CIA veteran, founder of the influential BERG Associates. We have been treated by you to expert analysis this evening, as always. Thanks very much for joining us on the Mother of All Talkshows.
Thank you, my friend.
Let me take a quick break, and then Morris in California. Stay tuned.
The airwaves. This savannah is a rigid dichotomy of fact and fiction. As Fisher says, the Twitter sphere where the slightest misjudgment can spell being cancelled. One species rules over the airwaves through its ability to adapt and survive in even the harshest environments. The George Galloway. The top cat in these parts, it is mostly active on Sunday evenings in Britain and mid-afternoon in the United States. It seldom roars during the day. Most notable for its wide variety of headdress, it protects these parts from the mainstream media. You can catch this fine specimen on the Mother of All Talkshows. Don't pick a fight with it. They've been known to bite back.
You are listening to the Mother of All Talk Shows with George Galloway.
Well, I think I can close the poll now. The result is overwhelming. Do you trust governments to regulate social media? Well, let me read the yes. On Telegram, 2%. On X, 4%. On the YouTube community poll, 3%. On the YouTube stream, 5%. Who are they? Who are the 5% of the people watching this live on YouTube who do trust governments to regulate social media? You must be in the governments if you voted that way. On patreon.com/George Galloway, 0% trust governments to regulate social media. Let's go to California. Who wouldn't? It's 17 degrees below outside here. Let's go to California and talk to Morris about World War III.
I'm going to tell you something, George. This is just my opinion. I'm not thinking we're going to have a World War III. United States is a paper lion, George. The Chinese, they control 90% of all of your central mineral processing, and you need that to process your military equipment. So we can only go so far with the war, and all we've got to offer, Mr. Trump, is bravado. That's all we got is bravado. Don't mess with Iran. Those military bases are also targets, and if you don't believe me, ask the Israelis. There is no defense for a hypersonic missile. It's over. And I want to give a shout-out to BRICS. They provided the world with a financial alternative. The SWIFT bank is losing its teeth. Now, I got another personal opinion. I believe that Donald Trump is a Trojan horse for Mr. Putin. The secret talks, there's no translators, there's no recordings, all that kind of stuff. Okay, that's why they call him Taco. And I'm going to leave you with this too, George. Now, U.S. Treasury bonds, everybody in the world is selling them off. Everybody's selling off these U.S. Treasury bonds. They also got a repatriation of their gold reserves. They want their gold back. Our stock market is going to collapse. Why is it going to collapse? Because our AI stock is overvalued. Okay, it's overvalued. We don't have enough energy to support one of those plants, and we can't print enough money to get out of this one, George. We're in a pickle. We are really in a pickle. For those of you out there that believe in prayer, please, would you pray for my country, the United States of America? Thank you.
Well, that's a devastating call, brilliantly expressed and intriguing. Morris in California thinks that Donald Trump is an agent of Vladimir Putin and that therefore there will be no World War III. I hope he's right. I mean, if it emerged that Donald Trump was secretly working for the Kremlin behind me, well, that would make him Comrade Trump to me. And that would mean that the world could breathe easily and that there would be no danger of World War III breaking out in the Persian Gulf. I hope that you're right, Morris, but I fear that you are wrong. Now, Moat's big donors tonight, fantastic again. Have you made your donation yet? By the way, you just have to go to moats.tv and do it, and it's the only way that we can keep going, at least keep going twice a week. The second show is always in danger if you don't give what you can. So please join the club, help us. Now, Ramadan Yusuf, Ramadan Mubarak, to Ramadan Youssef and all Muslims around the world, Greta Pansini, Kerry Pay, James Glass, and Carla Cooton. Well, I don't know what to say. Your generosity takes my breath away. And I hope that it encourages others to weigh in, even with £1, $1, €1, whatever you can afford. Go to moats.tv or scan that QR code in the corner of the screen now. Let's go to Gordon in Lewis. Long time, Gordon. You want to talk about Iran and Israel. Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatul barakatuh. And for those of you that don't speak Gaelic, that means may the peace be of God be upon us all. Yes, dude, we're sitting here in the storm and we're going, get a grip. Dude, Iran's got 600 missiles that are positioned pin-tight point. They can take out cars, subways and buildings. Donny's not going to risk that, because if Israel goes, what's the point? Who are they going to fund next? That's the question. So, yes, George, I appreciate you. I'm sorry you're in Moscow, but it's a good place. I worked in customs and excise in Ullapool for a long time. And the Russians are beautiful people. And so, anyway, everybody's beautiful people. So I want to say to the world, listen, see this whole Iranian thing in the Hormuz Straits, right? This is from an episode of Spooks in 2008. These people, I was going to say idiots, but I'm an idiot and I'm proud to be an idiot. But these people are just running scenarios and scripts for your benefication and satisfaction on the media to lead you down fear, terror, paranoia, blah de blah de blah de blah de blah. Orange man bad. Unfortunately, George, as you know, he's from Tongue in the Isle of Lewis. His mother was a MacLeod. And we're not even going to go into that.
Yes,
one.
You've taken the words out of my mouth. I was going to make that very point. That if not for the Isle of Lewis, from Gordon in Lewis, Angus Ogg, you made me think of there. I loved Angus Ogg. As a youth, I used to follow that comic strip all the time. Gordon in Lewis is from the very island that brought us Donald J. Trump. Mrs. Trump, Senior, was from the Isle of Lewis, and Gordon is still there, and he's filled with optimism, filled with something that there's not going to be a war. That's 2 in a row, so maybe you're right. I love you, Gordon. Thank you for that wonderful call. Now, comments. Crowhawk says Iran should have insisted on the inspection and dismantlement of Israel's nuclear weapons as a prerequisite for any negotiations. Fix in Man says women can't drive cars in Saudi Arabia. That's factually untrue. Now, women can't leave the house alone in the UAE. That's also factually untrue. But yeah, Iran is the only one who oppresses women. Women in Iran are the most advanced women in the region. Women in Iran have the most powerful and important jobs in virtually every single industry. Women in Iran have a freedom in the home which women in the West could only dream of. All of these tropes are completely false. Women now do drive cars in Saudi Arabia. Women have always been able to leave the house in the UAE. And in Iran, women are liberated. Peace Creature says Trump made Iran an offer they could only refuse. That's right. Fight Back 397 says USS Liberty 2.0 incoming. Well, if I were Israel, if I were the Mossad, I'd be preparing a false flag attack on an American target right now, just to make sure that Trump goes all the way. Alan, is it Alan? Yeah, Alan says the US is getting their information on diplomacy from Mad magazine in the 1960s. Brilliant. Junior is in Canada, and he wants to talk about where the world is heading. To hell in a handcart, I'd say, Junior. What about you?
Good evening, George. I'm in Toronto, Canada. So it's afternoon now. It's evening. It's a pleasure to talk to you, and I'm always praying for you because you are such a breath of fresh air, and I've been watching you from the invasion of Iraq, and how you've been so outspoken about the madness of this world that sometimes I even worry about your safety. But I know the good Lord is watching over you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, George. And Mr. Galloway, I think personally what's happening now in the Middle East, what we're about to see is that the war in Gaza was the small spark that starts the big fire. And I told my wife and all the people that I know, if you go back and saw what happened in Gaza, all the Western countries who could have just done enough to avoid over 80,000 people just being massacred, where the Israeli army unleashed hell on those people. You know, they destroyed cemeteries, they destroyed mosques, they destroyed infrastructure, they destroyed roads, they destroyed everything in their way. And all the Western countries stood by and watched the onslaught on the Gaza Strip. And because no one curtailed Israel, what's happening now is that it's like having a child that is so spoiled where the parents do not rein him in. And what happens now, the big fire is coming. And unfortunately, most of us will not escape what's about to unfold, because Iran is at a point now where it's do or die. It's do or die. And Israel and America wants Iran destroyed, not in the case of where destroyed and occupied, because they know they can't do it, because they do not have ground troops. What the plan is, George, I think they're going to just unleash a relentless bombing to destroy the infrastructure, destroy maybe the missile programs, the air bases or the army bases, and they think that will win the war. But what they don't see coming is that Israel will suffer immensely from this, and I'm not sure they can recover either.
Well, Luke, a very, very eloquent call, and thank you for your beautiful words at the beginning of it. It's kind of you to worry about my safety, but you needn't. I am a religious believer. I believe in God. God decides everything, and if my safety is compromised, it's because God wants it that way. Of course, I also tie up my camel, trust in God, and tie up your camel. And I have plenty of people protecting me, but if the worst were to happen, I have, by the grace of God, a young wife full of talent and vibrancy and 6 beautiful children. And 5 of them aren't even married yet, so I'm going to have lots of grandchildren, by the grace of God, and I'm ready, always. But as long as I can draw breath, I will continue to rail against injustice. I will continue to preach the word of the Lord, and I will continue to analyze situations to the best of my ability. Sometimes I might be wrong. I was wrong once, I think 1978, but I've been right almost all of the time. And I was right when I said that there is no ceasefire in Gaza. And moreover, the Israeli regime would begin to wreak murder and mayhem in the West Bank, both of which have turned out to be absolutely true. All those mugs that joined the Board of Peace, all those people that talked about a ceasefire in Gaza, hundreds of people, hundreds and hundreds, 1,500 people have been killed, many more wounded and maimed since this so-called ceasefire. And any forces that were withdrawn from Gaza are now in the West Bank. and instituting a reign of absolute terror there. And the government of Israel has just declared effective annexation of huge parts of the occupied territory in the West Bank. Junior in Toronto in Canada, thank you so much. Now looking ahead at tomorrow at 9 p.m, you can tune in to the Workers' Party's campaign talk. Terrific, these talks. Mark Belshaw, young friend of mine, will be joined by the veteran television broadcaster, Mohammed Shafiq, who is one of our lead candidates in Rochdale in the elections coming up. You're going to hear a lot more about both of these men. So they'll be discussing our election campaign strategy as well as the current vital political issues. It'll be live on YouTube and Rumble. Campaign talk tomorrow at 9 p.m. There's a legend on the line. It's Norma in Bristol. Norma, what would you like to say?
Hello, George. Hello? Hello?
You sound wonderful. You sound very bright, better than the last time I heard you.
Oh, I don't know about that. There's so much going on, George, at the moment, but I've just got 2 quick points. The one's about the King of Jordan, and the other is about the death of Jesse Jackson. Now, I'm a bit curious. The King of Jordan visited Starmer yesterday. What would be the meaning of that meeting? That's the first point. And the second point about Jesse Jackson, I did have a lot of respect for him. And he did speak, didn't he, on the platform like you, when they had the big demo for Iraq, the war against Iraq. I was there too. I heard you
February
speak.
15.
But
well, I don't know, Norma. I don't know what the King and Starmer were talking about. Maybe they were making joint retirement plans, because both of them are in considerable difficulty if the balloon goes up, and in Starmer's case, whether it goes up or not. But I'm glad you've given me the opportunity to refer to the Reverend Jesse Jackson, who died today. I think he was in his 80s. I'm not sure exactly.
He was about 84,
I think he was born in 41, yeah. He was born in 41. He was a very great man, ahead of his time. He was practically the first big-time U.S. politician to stand up for the Palestinian people. He did so unreservedly in the teeth of bitter hostility from the Israel lobby in the United States. He opposed war, and he was quite a talker, wasn't he, Norma? He was a brilliant orator.
Yeah, he was a
that good
personality.
old-time religion. Yeah, he was a Martin Luther King type of fellow, and indeed he was present at the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. He was on the balcony with Dr. King when he was shot dead. He held the body becoming lifeless of Martin Luther King. And I was very proud indeed to march with him at the front of the 2 million march on February 15th, 2003. And so I was saddened by his demise today. But it's worth remembering how cold it was that day in Hyde Park, Norma. Well, if I tell you, that was positively Floridian weather compared to the weather here in Moscow, where I'm about to go out to 17 degrees below with a forecast of a big snowstorm tomorrow and Friday. So I'll thank you for that lovely call, last call of the evening, because oh, here comes the woman without whom the news wouldn't be the news. Here's Gayatri. What's rattling, Gayatri?
Gongsi, Fachai, and Ramadan Mubarak to everyone. This year, Chinese New Year and Ramadan, they fall onto the same day. And this alignment actually happens only every 3 decades or so. So it's a very special occasion. And so where else than where else to be than the place where you can double celebrate this occasion, which is Indonesia, which is home to the largest Muslim population, 87% out of 288 million, and then also the largest Chinese diaspora population, estimated at around 11 million. Now, I emphasize estimates because actually there's not a real recent census of the Chinese population in Indonesia. The Dutch in the 1930s had a census because they categorized the Chinese as a completely separate section within the population. And then the 1965 massacre, of course, happened, in which the presumed communist and Chinese communities were purged. And then this continued under the 30-year dictatorship of the Western-backed General Suharto, in which the Chinese in Indonesia were suppressed officially and discriminated against. Their names had to be changed. They were forbidden cultural displays such as Chinese New Year. And I also emphasize diaspora because it's very difficult to define Chinese communities, as is the case throughout Southeast Asian countries where the Chinese have been for many centuries. In the case of Indonesia's 8 centuries, the early recorded movement from China to Indonesia was in 1293 by Kublai Khan, who was the grandson of Genghis Khan. And further prominent Chinese after that was in the early 1400s, which was by Admiral Zheng He, who was during the Ming Dynasty coming from the Yunnan province as a Chinese Muslim. So what I'm trying to say is that Chinese Muslims are a real thing, and for a very long time. Around 1/2 and 3% of China is Muslim. That comes down to 25, 30 million across many, like 10 ethnicities, although mostly people know Chinese Muslims as Uyghur nowadays. And of course, we had the great opportunity to visit Xinjiang to see the Chinese Muslims in real life as they were when we were making our documentary. And in Indonesia, even though we've had this dark past vis-a-vis the Chinese, now, of course, after the dictatorship, the Chinese are celebrated and are properly part of Indonesia. And therefore today, this double celebration was a big event. And throughout Indonesia and in major cities, there was the Chinese dragon along with traditional Indonesian Islamic festivities celebrated to celebrate Chinese New Year as well as welcoming the start of Ramadan. And this looks good for the future because, of course, China is Indonesia's largest trading partner. China invests a lot in Indonesia, continues its Belt and Roads in Indonesia. So this is a wonderful occasion for today.
Well, you've certainly educated us. You've educated me. I'm very grateful for that. Many of those things you said I didn't know. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Ramadan and Chinese New Year at the same time. You'll definitely be going for chips after the show, I am certain. So, Ramadan Mubarak to you, to all the people in Indonesia, and to all the Muslims all over the world. And Kong Hei Fa Choi, Happy Chinese New Year. It's been marvelous for me and for Gayatri and for the whole MOATS team. We are going to celebrate a little bit ourselves just after the show. Thank you very much for being with me this evening. 2 cracking guests and some really profound telephone calls. I hope that you'll come back for the next show every Sunday, every Wednesday, 7 p.m. It's the mother of all talk shows.
It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.